Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff, presented by Connecticut School of Broadcasting here in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and this is the inaugural episode of the FCS Kickoff. We at Football Game Plan are excited about this new venture, and we've partnered up with the Connecticut School of Broadcasting in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey, that particular campus, to bring you a college football show that exclusively covers the Football Championship Subdivision, or FCS for short. This is the first show of its kind, and we're ready to get things kicked off. You can find this show every Thursday at www.footballgameplan.com/FCS Kickoff. Be sure to stay connected with us on social media. We're located on Twitter at the FCS Kickoff, Facebook.com/FCS Kickoff, Instagram at FCS Kickoff, Vine FCS Kickoff, Periscope the FCS Kickoff, Snapchat FCS Kickoff. In the coming weeks, we'll also add the FCS Opening Drive, which will be a podcast that'll dive even deeper into the FCS with cool features, topics, player and coach interviews, and a whole lot more. But let's get this episode kicked off by taking a trip around the FCS, starting in the Missouri Valley Conference with our correspondents, Anthony Crescenzo and Brian Sullivan. Take it away, guys.
Thanks, Emery. For the Missouri Valley Football Conference, I'm Anthony Crescenzo. Let's get right into it. You can't talk MVFC without saying North Dakota State University. The five-time defending FCS national champion Bisons kick off the season for the conference in Fargo against defending Big Southern Conference champs, Charleston Southern, in the third annual FCS kickoff, August 27th at 6:30 p.m. on ESPN. The network and conference have reached an agreement increasing coverage through the 2023 season. According to Commissioner Patty Viverito, there will be more than 50 Valley games available on ESPN3. According to me, it helps when the Bisons win 13 national championships, 32 conference championships, and are the first college football team ever to win 5 consecutive NCAA championships. Yes, NDSU starting quarterback Carson Wentz is gone and looking to get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft after his second national championship and going on his 143 consecutive pass, no interception streak. But head coach Chris Klein has quarterback Easton Stick, who played 11 games last year, and he's just a sophomore. Stick had 1,100 passing yards, 500 rushing, and 5 rushing TDs. And that nationally ranked defense, with Nick DeLuca and his 135 tackles last year, the Bisons will be just fine the 2016 campaign. Now with the rest of the nationally ranked teams in the conference, Brian Sullivan.
Thank you, Anthony. Let's see if we can find a dark horse to unthrone the mighty Bisons. Let's start off by heading to northern Iowa, where there's a reason to be excited this year in Cedar Falls, as the number 7 Panthers have their star receiver, Darius Fountain, returning for his junior year. The 6'3", 230-pound receiver led the team with 604 yards and 5 touchdowns and was a major factor in propelling northern Iowa to victory against Eastern Illinois with 2 touchdowns on their way to the second round of the playoffs. With leading rusher Tyvius Smith and Ohio State transfer quarterback Aaron Bailey returning as well, Northern Iowa could be a sleeper. All right, now let's head to Illinois State, where the number 10 Redbirds look to continue their success by tying North Dakota State with the 7-1 record behind a prolific offense that averaged a 34.7 points per game last season. They will have a big mountain to climb, though, as their starting quarterback Trey Robertson and leading rusher Marshawn Culprich both graduated, but second-year quarterback Jake Colby says he can't wait to take over the team and throw to Missouri Valley Conference first team and third team All-American receiver Anthony Warham, who set an Illinois State single-season record for touchdowns with 15 last season. And finally, let's head to South Dakota State, where the number 12 Jackrabbits look to continue their success after making their 4th straight football championship subdivision playoff appearance with their 5-3 conference record last year. There's a reason to smile, as starting quarterback Zach Lucien will be returning for his junior year after throwing 14 touchdowns last season. Joining him are leading rusher Brady Marigoli, who rushed for 742 yards and 6 touchdowns, and leading receiver Jake Winke. The 6'4", 210-pounder had 1,472 yards and 11 touchdowns. This has been a look at the Missouri Valley Football Conference. Now with a look at the Patriot League, let's send it over to Jarrett Gold.
Thanks, Anthony and Brian. Well, last year's 2015 Patriot League champion was Colgate. Today, I want to focus in on the Rams of Fordham. I'm very excited about this upcoming 2016 season for Fordham. They last year were overall 9-3. Colgate won the conference 6-0 undefeated, and they were 9-4 overall. Fordham was 9-3 overall and 5-1 in the conference, their one loss in the conference being to Colgate. I'm very excited about this year's Fordham team because Joe Moorhead, the former head coach, just left to go to Happy Valley to Penn State to be the OC. So the new head coach, Andrew Briner, it's his first job. He's a disciple of Moorhead. He's been with Moorhead for the past 4 years at Fordham and 3 years prior at UConn when they went to the Fiesta Bowl in 2011. They have returning senior quarterback Kevin Anderson, who in 2015 threw for 3,183 yards and 32 touchdowns. Also returning junior running back Chase Edmonds rushed for 1,705 yards and 25 touchdowns. So they got both those players coming back. It's going to be a very exciting year, I believe, because in 2015, out of 123 teams in the FCS, Fordham ranked 18th in the nation in total offense. And they have the same offense in place. Offensive coordinator is now the head coach, returning senior quarterback, returning junior running back. Where they need to improve on, although they're 18th in the nation in total offense, they were 92nd in total defense. So they need to step it up on the defensive end of the ball. If they do so, which I think they will, they're going to have a tremendous year and be the champions this year. I'm very excited about 2016 Fordham Rams. And with the Northeastern Conference, here's Matt Shabatari.
Thanks, Jared. With your Northeastern Conference football report, I'm Matt Chabatari. As spring practices are underway in the Northeastern Football Conference, the Wagner Seahawks looks to go from worst to first in 2016. In Jason Hautling's first year taking over for the Wagner's legendary head coach Walt Hamlin, it didn't go so well, finishing 1-10 overall and 1-5 in the NEFC. In the offseason, the Wagner Seahawks brought in a new offensive coordinator in Richard Scangarella, a quality control assistant from the Atlanta Falcons, to improve an offense that only averaged 14.2 points per game last year, near the bottom of the league. Wagner looks towards the 2016 with optimism as 3/4 of their starting defensive backfield return, led by team captains and fifth-year seniors linebacker Najee Harris and all-NEC tight end Ryan Wilson. Wagner are looking to challenge the NEFC's top team in 2015, Duquesne. Looking around the league, the 2015 NEFC champion Duquesne Dukes, led by head coach Sherry Schmidt, returned senior quarterback Dylan Beichel and junior running back Rafiq Douglas on offense, but significant losses on the defensive side of the ball in linebackers Armstead Williams and Sam Martello might bring the Dukes back to the pack in 2016. The San Francisco Red Flash and head coach Chris Villarreal hope to take over conference supremacy in 2016 after falling just short of the title with a late-season loss to Duquesne. The Red Flash are returning senior quarterback Zach Dreyer and junior running back Marcus Bagley and redshirt junior D-back Robert Miller in hopes of dethroning the Dukes in 2016. The Sacred Heart Pioneers, led by head coach Mark Knopfrey, have to pick up the pieces on the offensive side of the ball as they lost their quarterback in RJ Noel and receivers Jackson King and Andrew O'Neal to graduation. Senior running back Osei Emio Camparia hopes to keep the Pioneers relevant in 2016. Check back next week with myself, Matt Chabatari, for the latest on Wagner football and the Northeastern Conference, only here on the FCS Kickoff Show. Now to James Simeone and Craig Seary with the latest on the Pioneer League football.
Thanks, Matt. Last season, Marist finished 6th in the PFL, posting a record of 5-6, and were 4-4 within the division. Dayton and San Diego were your co-champions. Marist was competitive last season, losing by only 7 or less to the Pioneer League top teams.
Next season, the Red Foxes look to improve upon their 2015 regular season record with a favorable schedule on their horizon. They get both co-champions late in the season and at home, with a fairly winnable game against the 2-9 Stetson Hatters in between. Their offense will look to keep it rolling, feeding the ball to senior running back Marcellus Calhoun, who will no longer be sharing carries with graduate Garrett Clay. Junior QB Mike White, who started 8 games last season, will try to build a rapport this offseason with standout wideout receiver Justin Christian. Christian totaled 826 yards and 6 touchdowns as a freshman last season and is the bright future of the Foxes.
Defensively, the Red Foxes may take a step back after losing 4 of their seniors. Miguel Sandoval, a 5th-year senior, led the team with 73 tackles and was named second team All-PFL. They're losing 2 veterans in the secondary with safety and co-captain Zach Adler and starting corner Zach Quarles, who led the team with 3 interceptions. They lose their only PFL first-teamer, defensive lineman Demetrius Williams. Fortunately, 2 key starters return in the linebacker Jimmy Braun and cornerback Cameron Gibson, who seems like a good fit to fill Quarles' shoes.
Now, back to Emory Hunt with a look at the Big South.
Moving over to the Big South Conference at Monmouth, they wrapped up their pro day just yesterday with offensive lineman Rachel Meter and tight end Hakeem Vales being the headliners. Both guys had excellent workouts and should be next in line of outstanding Monmouth Hawk football players to go to the NFL. In the Southwestern Athletic Conference, Alabama A&M has dealt with a lot of loss and tragedy this spring. They had to bid farewell to sophomore football student athlete Danny Johnson, who was killed in a 2-vehicle collision late March. And this is already amongst a spring football season where the Alabama A&M Bulldogs is trying to get back to the upper echelon of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And they'll continue their spring this week as the spring game was moved to April 9th, which is this weekend. The annual Maroon and White football game will kick off Saturday at 10:30 a.m. at Lewis Cruz Stadium. Down in the Southland Conference, Northwestern State has had a tumultuous spring due to the fact that the weather hasn't been cooperating with the Demons throughout the course of their time in spring football. The most grueling half of practices are in the books for Northwestern State, according to Jay Thomas. He hopes the break provided the rest and recovery for all the guys and what they need, especially the big guys up front. They have to come back in April, rip-roaring and ready to go. Now, with the start of spring drills delayed a week by torrential rains, March 8th through 11th, Northwestern State crammed 6 practices into 6 consecutive days last week to get back on pace. Coach Jay Thomas is satisfied with the progress of his 4th Demon squad as he looked to capitalize on a building process that they started last season. The Demons will wrap up spring practice with the 27th annual Joe Delaney Bowl on Saturday morning, April 16th, as the last of 15 workouts. In the Colonial Athletic Association, the football schedule for 2016 was released, and they kick off their conference schedule September the 10th with Albany taking on Rhode Island. That should be a great game to kick off the CAA, and this is a conference that 32 all-time victories versus FBS programs, and last year James Madison knocked off SMU. Down in the Southern Conference, VMI kicked off their spring practices today. Second-year head coach Scott Wachenheim and his team will conduct 3 straight practices April 7th through April 9th before going to a regular practice slate over the next 3 weeks. Now, scrimmages are scheduled for Saturday on April 16th, April 23rd, and April 30th will be the spring game. Now we're looking at the Big Sky Conference. Southern Utah is a team that was very impressive last season, and they're going to have to rebuild, reload, and get right back into action for 2016. The Thunderbirds lost their head coach, starting quarterback, and 3 highly rated NFL draft prospects on the defensive side of the football. However, with defensive coordinator Demario Warren moving into the head coaching position, I think Southern Utah is very hopeful that 2016 will be the same story, just a different year. Former head coach Ed Lamb is gone. Again, Coach Warren believes that the expectations for the Thunderbirds in 2016 is to continue to build on the program's recent success. And if anything that we learned from these guys last season is of any indication, we should definitely see the Thunderbirds back into the playoffs in 2016. Southern Utah's spring game is April the 16th, and the Thunderbirds open the season on September 1st in Salt Lake City against the University of Utah. Moving over to the Ivy League, the league as a whole has moved to eliminate tackling at football practices. The 8 Ivy League coaches unanimously approved the measure a couple of weeks ago, and research has shown that limiting the amount of full contact practices can reduce the number of concussions. And that's a big thing, not only in college football, but in high school and the NFL. Now, head coach Buddy Teven said that contrary to some fears, his players have become better tacklers. Players still can tackle between 500 to 800 times a year, but instead of launching themselves at other players in practice, they focus on how to tackle to avoid head collisions, and the number of missed tackles in games for Dartmouth has fallen by more than half. Now, you look at the Ivy League's new rule was inspired by one of its members, Dartmouth, like I mentioned, where full contact practices throughout the year were eliminated by Coach Buddy Teven, starting in 2010 to reduce injuries, including concussions that kept players out of games and wore them down over the course of the season. Now, this past season, with this newly initiative in place, Dartmouth won the Ivy League title. So I think Buddy Teven knows a little bit about something that's going on. And Princeton also has taken the unique approach to where tackling each other is not necessary. They have the big donut. They're rolling out, and you guys can tackle the donut, getting your head across the body of the defender, the ball carrier, and be able to tackle him to the ground. And also at Dartmouth's Pro Day, I was able to see those moving tackling dummies that get up to 4.75 speed in a 40-yard dash, 18 miles an hour. Very impressive to see these guys go full speed with these tackling dummies. Moving over to the MEAC, Florida A&M returns to Mobile, Alabama, not permanently, but to take on the Tuskegee Tigers in the 5th Quarter Classic powered by the Mobile Sports Authority. With the Rattlers holding a 27-15-2 advantage in this series, Florida A&M and Tuskegee have had a rivalry that dates back to 1908. In 1996, due to a conference change, the schools ended their 44-game rivalry, and the Mobile Sports Authority Association announced that this 20-year hiatus will be awakened in 2016 with the 2016 5th Quarter Classic powered by the Mobile Sports Authority. Kickoff is scheduled for 6 p.m. Central Time at Ladd-Peebles Stadium on week 3 of the season. Down in the Ohio Valley Conference, we're going to take a look at Austin Peay State. I like what I'm seeing coming from the Governors this spring. A 90-play scrimmage this past Saturday at Morgan Brothers Soccer Field, the first under head coach Will Healy, and they scored 4 offensive touchdowns, which is very impressive to see from the Governors, something that fans will get used to seeing throughout the season. I believe this offense will be much improved over 2014. Coach Healy said, "We don't have a lot of depth, especially on the defensive line, but I was excited to see some of these young guys step up and make plays, which will be key because the OVC is a very tough conference." Spring practice continues next week for Austin Peay and is scheduled to culminate in the April 23rd spring game at Governor Stadium.
New York City is the largest market for broadcast media. It's the epicenter for the TV and radio industry. If you ever had a dream of working in the thrilling broadcast world, then make it a reality by going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. CSB has helped numerous people get a job with hands-on training and a learn-by-doing mentality. You will learn all of the high-tech equipment in the TV and radio studios. From hosting your own radio show, to being a news or sports anchor, operating a camera in the TV studio, or editing audio and video, the choice is yours. Graduates from CSB have gone on to work at some of the major companies in the industry. To get more information, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out at gocsb.com. Your road to success starts here at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
And welcome back to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff presented by Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Looking at the FCS coaching changes, there were 19 new hires this past offseason in the FCS. Fordham brought in Andrew Briner, who's taking over for Joe Moorhead, who's now the offensive coordinator at Penn State. And Briner is 31 years old, probably the youngest head football coach in the FCS. You look at this list, a lot of great names have gone, but a lot of great names are also coming in. You look at Alcorn State's Jay Hobson going to Southern Miss with Fred McNair replacing him, and that was announced February 2nd. Southern Illinois' Dale Lennon is gone. He was gone November 30th. Nick Hill comes in December 1st. So they made that switch pretty quickly. And keep an eye on Texas Southern. I like the hire of Michael Haywood, formerly of LSU. I remember him down at LSU when he was a running backs coach. He had some issues with Pitt, coached very well at Miami of Ohio, and now finds himself with another opportunity at Texas Southern. Now that the coaching changes are out of the way, let's unveil our FCS Kickoff Spring Top 25. Looking at number 25, starting with the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. You see 25 to 20 here. North Dakota is number 25. I think the Fighting Hawks are going to be outstanding this upcoming season. But Prairie View, A&M, keep an eye on these guys. 10 starters return on defense. Yes, they lose Jonta Abear, the outstanding running back, but 7 starters return on offense. I think that's a team to watch moving forward. And Penn is another football team that I really like. Second-year head coach Ray Priori has a ton of talent offensively. Quarterback Alec Torgerson, running back Trey Solomon, and wide receiver Justin Watson may end up being the most outstanding trio in the Ivy League. North Carolina A&T is a young football team that returns a lot of what they brought to the table last year, which led them to the Celebration Bowl in a victory over Alcorn State. Keep an eye on running back Tariq Cohen, the outstanding game breaker at tailback. They also lose Tony McCray, the talented cornerback, to the NFL, but this was a young team last year and they got to a bowl game. Expect more of the same coming from the Aggies. At number 12, South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits, led by their quarterback Zach Lujan. I think the Jackrabbits, quite honestly, have been knocking on the door for the last 3 seasons. I think they're about ready to kick the door in this year in the Missouri Valley Conference. At number 8, you see Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks. They lost the championship game last year to North Dakota State. Quarterback Eli Jenkins returned, and we know head coach John Gross does a great job in getting his guys ready to play. He's going to have to really coach up their defense because they lost a ton of playmakers at each and every level. Looking at the top 5, the Chattanooga Mocs, in my opinion, is a team that people will talk about like they started to talk about Jacksonville State last year. I'm a big fan of what they bring to the table defensively. Keonta Davis was an All-American last year, all-conference performer, 13.5 sacks, 6'4", 260. Keep an eye on him moving forward, and you can't have an FCS top 25 spring, fall, winter, summer without including the North Dakota State Bison at number 1. The 5-time national champions led by head coach Chris Klieman, who won his first championship as a head coach, and quarterback Easton Stick should carry the torch from Carson Wentz and also from Brock Jensen as quarterbacks that have won championships. It wouldn't surprise me to see Stick, who helped keep this team afloat while Wentz was out for those 7 games last year, help get this football team back to Frisco, Texas.
The Connecticut School of Broadcasting can help you reach the next level in the amazing world of broadcast and entertainment media.
I've mentored several interns here at the Covino and Rich Show at SiriusXM, and the ones from CSB always stand out to me. They have a knowledge of the equipment, knowledge of editing, what it's like to be in a studio, and that always eliminates a huge learning curve.
Their professional studios give students a hands-on, learn-by-doing approach using equipment used in actual radio stations and TV studios. Visit our website at gocsb.com or call 1-800-TV-RADIO. Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Start today.
And welcome back to the FCS Kickoff presented by Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm here with Teron Davenport, football game plan analyst. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. I ain't going nowhere. Teron, we have to do our pro day wrap up for the FCS, and starting in the Bronx with Fordham, and they had a really good set of prospects there, and you like one offensive lineman that had a really good workout.
Yeah, Garrick Mayweather, he's the Debo of the offensive line. He moves really well, so he had that on display. He's a guy that has really good functional strength, so he's someone I think at the next level will really stand out. I think that a team that likes to allow their linemen to get on the move and make plays in space will really benefit from a guy with his athleticism.
And you look at another Fordham player, Stephen Hodge, who was a linebacker by definition, but he's really a strong safety. But in their defense, he played close to the box, he played out in space. He also showed that athleticism at the pro day, and I thought he did well to help himself out. Now, Columbia had some prospects as well. You look at Chad Washington, a defensive lineman, 6'4", 260. Nico Padilla is a defensive lineman, at 6'1", 300 pounds. Those two guys participated in Fordham's pro day, but showed themselves well in front of NFL scouts, personnel, decision makers, and also some coaches that were out there. So it's not only just for the teams that host the pro day, but you're going to see a lot of guys come in and do a great job. Now let's look at another team that we checked out in Yale, and they have a quarterback in Morgan Roberts that I was very impressed with. This guy, I said, looks like a stronger arm version of Ty Detmer. Now, some people don't know who Ty Detmer is, but he won the Heisman Trophy. Right? He was a good player. Yeah. And what I like about Morgan Roberts is that he is not afraid to put the football in tight spots. I watched him versus Cornell lead Yale to a comeback, and I also checked him out later on in the season versus Penn. They lost that game, but I saw a lot of toughness and moxie from him. Now, if we're talking quarterbacks, we got to go over to North Dakota State because they have a headliner out there that may go early in the draft.
Yeah, I don't think there's any make to it. He is going to go early. It looks like top 5 very possibly. But when you look at Carson Wentz, he's a guy that has the size that you want. And, hey, you know, he's a redhead quarterback. And he's a guy that they just love him. So just looking at what he's able to do, very big arm quarterback, does struggle a bit to throw the ball downfield. You look at his pro day at North Dakota State, and albeit it was indoors, so they tried to incorporate the elements. They squirted the football with some water, and that's when the workout kind of went down south.
Right.
He seemed to more aim the ball and not as much just throwing it, so that's something that is definitely going to come into play as far as his ability to play in the elements, because a lot of the teams that are looking at him are teams that play in elements, you know. And you look at San Francisco, that's a team, it's always wet there in Santa Clara, so that's still going to be a factor. So Carson Wentz is going to be an interesting prospect. I don't know for sure that I would take him in the top 10, but we'll see what happens.
And we'll definitely talk about that later on in our draft prospect segments of this show. Now, Campbell, the Pioneer League, and this is a league that is starting to get a lot of talent. We've seen teams like Butler, San Diego, Jacksonville do a great job out this league, but Campbell has 2 pro prospects in Greg Millhouse, a defensive lineman, played mostly like a nose tackle, but he's more likely to be a 3-tech at the next level, and Ugana Arunye. You know how to pronounce it. It took me all day to work on that, but those 2 defensive linemen coming out of Campbell had excellent workouts at their pro day, and I think Arunye kind of reminds me of a guy like Bud Dupree, or even a guy like Mario Williams. They're tall, they're muscular, they're athletic. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys look as they make the jump to the NFL. Now, speaking of defensive linemen, got to come back out to New York. Now we got to go to Long Island, Stony Brook. I know they have a really good defensive lineman as well.
Yeah, you know, during the season, you put me on to a guy by the name of Victor Ochi. Make sure you take note of that name, because I tell you what, his ability to come off the edge, and really what he wanted to show at his pro day was that ability, you know, to get off, and that's something that you need as far as in the NFL. You need guys that can get off the ball very quickly, and he showed that. He's a guy that has a lot of strength. He can set the edge also. So Victor Ochi is definitely one to watch out. He dominated the East-West Shrine Game practices.
Yeah, absolutely. He's 6'1", 6'2", 250. I think he reminds me a lot of a guy in Cliff Averill. I think he's better suited as a defensive end. But we'll have our chance to get more in depth with the defensive line in the draft next week in the episode of the FCS Kickoff. But let's look down in Philadelphia. There's a team that just won the national championship in basketball in Villanova. And they have a real good quarterback in John Robertson, who worked out very well at the pro day. And this was important for him because he was a Walter Payton Award winner, which we know is the FCS equivalent to the Heisman Trophy. This year he was trying to win back-to-back Walter Payton Awards, but the issue was he got injured, tore PCL, missed the entire season, missed the rest of the season, only played in 3 games. So his pro day was important for him to show mobility, which he has, and the athleticism and the throwing ability. And I thought he did a great job throwing the football. You look at Don Cherry, a linebacker there, as well as running back Gary Underwood, also had a really good day working out, catching the football. He's more of a receiving type back, did a great job catching the football from John Robinson, who threw the football well. Now, we look at Dartmouth. You know, there's a guy that worked out down at Rutgers. We were both at Rutgers Pro Day, and we were scrambling through the list looking for A.J. Zuta's name, and we saw it and how you thought he worked out.
Yeah, and you know, one thing just to touch on real quick, you talk about bloodlines. You know, Garrick Mayweather, his father played football for the Ravens, and now you have another guy who plays for the Ravens, plays now, Jeremy Zuta, center, and he was there at Rutgers Pro Day. You look at A.J. Zuta, the thing that really impressed me was just his ability to move, you know, how he worked through the bag drills. He was quicker than a lot of the other defensive linemen that were there, so that was definitely something that stood out. I really want to go back and watch more of him, but he definitely showed the athleticism. We'll see how that transfers onto the football field.
Another guy that participated at Dartmouth's Pro Day was Vernon Harris, the cornerback. I think he can play safety as well. He's 6'2", legit 6'2", 195. He moves well. I called him Metroid because he has those long arms, long stride, kind of like Antonio Cromartie. And Dalen Williams, the quarterback, we'll speak about him in a second.
Oh, yeah.
But he's a tremendous player. He threw the football well. Now, what was impressive about that workout at the Pro Day was that it was in a stiff wind, and it also was drizzling, and they were outside. So no need to squirt the football. He's throwing into the wind, throwing a wet football. He did a great job. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back to take a look at the FCS NFL Draft prospects for 2016.
New York City, the media capital of the world. But in America, there is a world of media at our fingertips, from coast to coast. The broadcast media industry connects us in so many ways and remains on the cutting edge of providing us news and entertainment. Have you ever pictured yourself working in the media? Did you ever dream of working in TV or on the radio? Make your dreams come true today. Connecticut School of Broadcasting is the oldest and largest group of communication schools in the country. At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll learn by doing with hands-on training straight from professional broadcasters. There is job placement assistance for graduates, day and evening courses available. Graduate and get into the job market in only 8 or 16 weeks. Don't waste another second daydreaming about what you want to do with your life. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO and start living your dream today.
And welcome back to the FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, here with Teron Davenport. And last segment, we talked about the pro days. But right now, we're going to take a look at the FCS NFL Draft prospects for 2016. A lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of talent here at the FCS level. And this year in particular, we're just going to focus on the offensive prospects in this episode. But starting with the quarterback position, we talked a little bit about it last segment with Dalen Williams out of Dartmouth. What do you think about his game?
Well, you know, the comparison is definitely there, the Russell Wilson comparison. He is a guy that I really like what he does as far as his ability to scramble with his eyes downfield to make a big play. And he has the accuracy to throw the ball, get it to the receivers in position. And I think he's a big-time player, and he's severely underrated, and he's a guy that needs to be on more teams' radar. I really like Dalen Williams as a quarterback. You know, he checks all the boxes as far as the intelligence, the accuracy, the athleticism, the downfield accuracy. Can't really say much more about him. I mean, he's an outstanding player.
And you mentioned the downfield accuracy. I would say he and Cardell Jones are two guys that may have the best deep ball, downfield, accurate deep ball that I've seen in college football for a very long time. I love their deep ball accuracy. And Williams is a smart kid. Here's a guy that consistently makes all the right choices. And what I like about him is the fact that he went to Dartmouth and broke records. He broke Jay Fiedler's records, guy that played with the Miami Dolphins for a very long time. He also set the he was top 10 Ivy League all time in passing completions, percentage completions, efficiency, and he has the best touchdown to interception ratio in Dartmouth school history. And that says a lot about a guy going there and breaking records. And you look at, let's say, a guy in Carson Wentz, who had to come in and he had to follow a guy that won 3 straight national championships. Now, that could be a situation where a quarterback could easily falter, but he didn't. He helped carry this team to 2.
Yeah, just to digress for 1 second back to what you mentioned, and I'm glad you mentioned it because in the NFL, what's it all about? Not turning the football over, right? You go to your quarterback, you say, son, don't lose the game for me.
Right.
And that's something that Dalen Williams is very efficient at. He does not turn the football over. So we have to make sure we focus on that.
And I also have to mention, just like you said, being an impact player, the last Ivy League championship Dartmouth won was 1992. They won one last year, Dalen Williams. And so that ties right back into Carson Wentz with championships because they could have easily fallen off. Especially you break in a new quarterback against an FBS program in Iowa State, and all they did was go out there and win.
Yeah, and when you look at Wentz, I think one of the things that gets severely underrated, 600-plus yards rushing. He's a guy, 6 touchdowns, so he could definitely make plays with his legs. So you are getting a very athletic quarterback if you take him. And we mentioned his size and things like that. 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, so he's decent as far as the 2.5 to 1 interception or touchdown to interception ratio. So when you look at Carson Wentz, one of the things that we touched on in the Pro Day segment is just his inability to be accurate throwing the football down the field. And the NFL is all about big plays. So when you have that opportunity to make that big play, you have to take advantage of it. And that's not something that he did consistently as far as making his receivers slow down to catch the football, overthrowing them. You would like to see more accuracy, especially when you're using a top 5 pick on the quarterback. So that's something I really want to harp on. But at the same time, it's not in my best interest to beat up a prospect, so I do want to talk about his ability to make that opposite hash to sideline throws. He throws that comeback route very well, and he delivers the ball outside of the numbers with velocity. So that's something else to focus on. I think that he's more of a developmental quarterback, not as much a franchise guy ready to play from day one.
I think when you look at the Carson Wentz debate that we've seen on TV, we've seen on social media, it's 2 extremes. Either he's the elite prospect or he's not the elite prospect. But the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Right. He's a good quarterback, probably a mid-round grade, which is what we gave him at Football Game Plan, a mid-round grade, which is a guy you can win with, but you have to make sure you put him in certain situations where he can have success. Now, moving on to John Robertson. Here's a quarterback that when you look at him winning the Walter Payton Award, he plays a lot like Tim Tebow. Mobile guy, got good enough accuracy on those in-breaking routes, your digs, your bang eights, and he got better each and every year. I have to give him credit. His passing improved significantly. I was at the Towson game in 2014, and that's what Pierre Desir, but Ryan Delaire, the defensive end. That's what Ty Smith on the corner. He beat Ty Smith with his arm on a bang eight. Ty Smith had great coverage. There was nothing he could do. So you can't defend the perfect pass. And so I was impressed with Robertson coming into the season, and it's unfortunate he only played those 3 games. But if he's healthy, he's a guy that you definitely should keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think he's another one of those quarterbacks that they're gonna say, oh, well, he has to make more plays from the pocket. And me personally, I just want a playmaker at quarterback. If a guy's gonna touch the ball every snap, I want him to be someone that can make plays. Whether it be throwing from the quarterback, or pocket rather, throwing on the run, that's what I want. And you look at his athleticism, I think it was the game against Syracuse, 34 carries, 115 yards. So it's very clear that he could handle when you need him to run the football and get plays for you, get big plays for you. So I think Robertson is a guy that a lot of teams really need to watch out for. I love him, absolutely love him in Denver. You look at Gary Kubiak and how much he likes to move the pocket and take advantage of the quarterback's ability to throw on the run. Work play action, I think that he will be an excellent fit there. Go out there, compete with Mark Sanchez, eventually take over there if they get Kaepernick, whatever should happen. But I think Robertson will be an excellent fit in Denver.
It's all about fit, man. And you look at another player coming off an injury in Vad Lee from James Madison. Now, here's a unique case where a guy goes from, he was a highly touted recruit, goes to Georgia Tech, triple option offense if you're not familiar, leaves Georgia Tech after having some success there, goes to James Madison, becomes a spread quarterback, and starts to break records throwing the football. Got injured this year. The team tried to keep on track, but they couldn't sustain it. Had he been healthy, I think they may have seen North Dakota State in that championship game. They're a very strong team, different team, obviously, without Vad Lee. What were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, Vad Lee is a guy, I really like how he could work out at a shotgun, and I think it was good that they put him there because that takes advantage of, it gives him an opportunity to really see the football field, which is something that you mentioned that he's really good at, and you definitely see that. He has the ability to drop the ball right over the receiver's shoulder, whether it be on the corner routes, on the bang eights, on the seams. I really like that. As a receiver, I think about that, and I want a guy that's going to make it easy, make my job easy, and that's what he does. You look at what he's able to do as far as making plays on the move, and that's what's so interesting about these quarterbacks. Each one that we've talked about, they can make plays on the move. They can make plays when the play breaks down, and they can make something happen. And that's what you get. He's a guy that started. He started at Georgia Tech. Okay, he wasn't there and a part of this. He started, right? He wanted to go to James Madison, JMU, and become a guy that passed the football more and exhibit his throwing ability, and he did just that.
And helped them upset SMU this past season, another FCS knocking off an FBS opponent. Who else you have on your list as a top quarterback to keep an eye on?
Yeah, we talk about guys that throw the ball on the run. Well, now we're going to reverse it, right? We're going to look at a guy that's a pure pocket passer, and I admittedly didn't watch much of Georgetown, Kyle Nolan, but he's a guy 6'6", 235 pounds. He sits in that pocket, and he shows no fear when it comes to fitting the ball in tight spots. You mentioned that earlier about another quarterback. That's what you get out of this guy. He reminds me a lot of Mike Glennon, just as far as his windup, his size. He throws that bang eight very well. He throws the seam route. I love the way he will not hesitate to throw the ball to the receiver in the middle of the field. That takes nuts to be able to do that. There's times where there's three defenders around the receiver, he still fits it in there.
So what I like about him, and to back you up, I called 2 of his games. I was actually the color commentator for Georgetown versus Colgate and Georgetown versus Fordham, and came away highly impressed with how well Kyle Nolan played. What I didn't know prior to going in was that he's a heck of an athlete as well. So he can also get out there and run. A couple of plays versus Colgate, they couldn't tackle him. And now versus Fordham, when the blitz came, he was able to get out of pressure, get out of trouble a little bit. And you want a guy back there at 6'6", 235 that can move. Now, he's not the caliber of athletes that we've talked about prior with all these quarterbacks, but he's good enough to where he can get out of the way, and he definitely has a bright future. Had open heart surgery and able to bounce back from that and got better each and every year. Now, we go to my position, the tailback position. There's a guy that I've given a second-round grade to, and Marshawn Copridge out of Illinois State. If you haven't seen this guy run, just watch these highlights that we're rolling on the screen right now. He's a tremendous back. Reminds me a lot of a guy down in Tampa Bay and Doug Martin. Explosive burst. But I know you like him as another back, a comp to another back in the NFL that had a lot of success.
Well, I'll tell you what, over the last 5 years, there aren't any running backs that I like more than Frank Gore. So me giving him that comparison really speaks highly. I love the way he's able to he gets compact, he finds the hole, and he gets right through it. He's able to make a move, get outside, and he has the ability to run away from defenders also. He's a guy that's very effective catching the football out of the backfield also. I think that's something that you have to mention, how he can catch those swing routes right over his shoulder, and he'll take it a distance. So the Frank Gore comparison, if you watch the two of them play, you see a lot of similarities as far as the body movement. And when I make the Frank Gore comparison, just to be clear, I'm not saying he's the same exact player. He's that caliber of player. I'm talking about styles. And I think those styles match.
And he ran a 4.43 at the combine, 4.46 at the combine, and a 4.46, 4.48 at his pro day. So the speed, the burst, the explosiveness is consistent. The same can be said about Deshaun Mobley out of Eastern Kentucky, transferred from Kentucky, went down to EKU. So Noah Spence isn't the only prospect coming out that Colonel's program this year. What are your thoughts on Deshaun Mobley?
Yeah, I mean, he against Tennessee at Kentucky, he had 143 yards. So he's definitely a legit prospect as far as on the D1 level. But you look at him here, one thing I like is when he hits the open field, he's gone. And you wouldn't really realize that he's 5'11", 6 feet, 225 pounds. But his track background, he ran the 100, the 200, 4x1, 4x2. his form, it shows when he runs away from defenders. He's someone I really like, man. Just the little bit of wiggle that he gives, there's no wasted movement. He'll just give a move and go. And I love that about him. He's a guy you can run inside the tackles. A lot of times you see him running out of shotgun. And he's someone that I think is a special player, a home run hitter. And a guy at the Senior Bowl a couple years ago, David Johnson, comes to mind when I watch him just because of his mix of size. He doesn't run as upright as David Johnson, but the size and the ability to run away from defenders and be effective in the passing game. He reminds me a lot of him. But Mobley is a guy I think he definitely needs to be considered as far as when you talk about the top small school running backs, and I like him a lot.
And I like this jack of all trades guy we're going to talk about next. Before we hit a quick break, we're going to look at Jonta Hebert out of Prairie View A&M. And Jonta is a guy that can play running back, he can play receiver, but he was a legit game breaker. He was an all-purpose dynamo for the Panthers. They went 8-2 this year. They probably got snubbed for the FCS playoffs, but Robinson is a guy that can definitely get the job done.
New York City is the largest market for broadcast media. It's the epicenter for the TV and radio industry. If you ever had a dream of working in the thrilling broadcast world, then make it a reality by going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. CSB has helped numerous people get a job with hands-on training and a learn-by-doing mentality. You will learn all of the high-tech equipment in the TV and radio studios. From hosting your own radio show, to being a news or sports anchor, operating a camera in the TV studio, or editing audio and video, the choice is yours. Graduates from CSB have gone on to work at some of the major companies in the industry. To get more information, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out at GoCSB.com. Your road to success starts here at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
And welcome back to the FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, here with Teron Davenport, and we're wrapping up our FCS NFL Draft prospects for the 2016 NFL Draft, the offensive prospects. We ended on Jonta Hebert, but I know you had a little bit more you wanted to talk about his game.
Yeah, looking at him, he's one of those guys that, as a defender, you hate to play against because he not only stretches the field vertically, he stretches it horizontally. He's one of those guys you have to defend almost every blade of grass when you're going against somebody like that. You look at his short area quickness. He's very effective in the screen game. He's a guy that you could throw the ball to on swing routes. You put him in the slot, make a defender miss, swim him, lean to the corner and go to that post. And man, he's very difficult to stop. So that's something that I really like about him. He's a matchup nightmare, and that's what you want at the next level. You want a guy that's going to win matchups consistently, and that's what you get with him. And then just to also further it, he's a guy you could run sweeps, jet sweeps with him out of the backfield. He has the ability to run between the tackles if you want him to. I think he's an all-purpose guy, and he is one of the better playmakers. And as you mentioned, led Prairie View 8-2. Prairie View. Now, this is a team that traditionally is not a winning program, but 8-2 record, I think that's outstanding. And a lot of their success is because of him.
And good players find ways to help their team win football games. The same can be said for, now we move on to your position. SEMO, Southeast Missouri State. We both saw this young man down at the Senior Bowl, Paul McRoberts, outstanding receiver.
Yeah, man, when you look at McRoberts, he played basketball as a sophomore, and it really shows. You know, on the perimeter, in the middle of the field, on the post routes, he's just able to get position and jump up and high point the football. He catches it at the highest point. He has huge hands, long arms, and that helps him in a lot of the circus catches that he makes. If you watch his film, you'll see him make a lot of one-handed catches down the football field. And that's not a easy thing to do. You know, you have to be able to corral that football with one hand and have big hands to be able to do that. But just looking at him, one of the things I really liked about him at Senior Bowl was just the way he progressed. Okay, he, as a small school guy, going in there, going against, you know, your big time players, he really made it a point to show that he belonged. And he definitely did that. 6'3", 195 pounds. Love the way he works the 9 routes as far as slowing down and using his body to make the defender have to fight through the body. That's something, you don't just do that. Yeah, that's a nuance, you know, and I really like that about him. He's a guy, very good catching ability. We talk about the catching radius. He'll get you yards after the catch, too. A lot of times they will run those short screens and let him catch the football and just take it a distance. And, hey, playmaker, and that's what he is. I really like McRoberts. He stood out at Senior Bowl. Obviously, all season he stood out as well.
Yeah, the Senior Bowl was really a showcase for him. You also look at the tight end position. Another former receiver making the move to tight end. And sometimes when guys make the move, we have to tell this right quick, but sometimes when guys make that move from receiver to tight end, they ate their way there. Yeah. But I don't think Seth DeValve out of Princeton ate his way to tight end. He just started to continue to grow and grew into the tight end, but those receiver skills are still there, and he is definitely one of the more underrated tight end prospects in this year's draft class. I'm a big fan of his game, and we saw this on film at how he can flex out wide and move them all around, but he's a monster.
Yeah, and the thing is, he moves like a receiver. I forget which game it was, but he ran that corner route from the slot, and I mean, it was beautiful. You know, he was able to get the outside stem, get right back on course, and he leaned to the post, you know, to get the corner or the defender to slow down, turn around, went up and caught the football. I like to see that out of a guy. I mean, I always look at those type of nuances, and he's someone that has it. And then you talk about him being a tight end, you know, 245 pounds, 6'4", he bounces off of tackles. You know, there was one play where, you know, he caught the football, he bent his body, spun off the tackle, and he ran downfield. He's someone that I think is going to be an outstanding player at the next level. He reminds me a lot of, you know, a more athletic version of a Nick Boyle. You know, Nick Boyle, 265 pounds, but just the way he catches the football and bounces off of tackles, that's why he reminds me of him. So I like that kid a lot, and I think that he's going to be very productive at Seth DeValve.
And Nick Boyle is from Delaware in the FCS program. Nice plug right there. That was planned, by the way, you know, right off the cuff from the receiver. But if DeValve is healthy, that's his biggest thing. He hasn't been able to stay healthy throughout the course of his career, but if he's healthy, he is going to be a steal for someone in the NFL. Another guy that's going to be a steal, and we saw him live and up close at the Pro Day, at Temple's Pro Day. That's Ryan O'Malley, the tight end out of Penn. You talk about get off the bus looking the part. He looks like an NFL tight end. He also showed out at Villanova's Pro Day, and when you watch him on film, he just, again, consistently, even though they didn't throw it to him a lot because of their offense, his blocking was key. I fell in love with his inline blocking skills, and we know that's going to get you on the field in the NFL. But talk about his receiving skills and how that's going to keep him in the NFL.
He catches the ball very softly. If you remember at Temple's Pro Day, I turned to you, man, the ball doesn't make any noise when he catches it. Then, even more importantly, he moves very well. He's a guy that you could use as an H-back. You could have him, you know, catch the ball out of the fullback, quote-unquote, position. You could motion him to the slot and allow him to run the turn routes, the stick routes as a tight end. You mentioned his ability to block, so you could put him in line. You know, he's not a guy you put in the game and you just know, okay, the team's going to pass the football. He's someone that I think can use his size at 6'6", 265 pounds, his athleticism, and be a problem in the red zone. You know, you look at his body, you flex him out. Well, imagine as a corner, you're lined about wide. You got a 6'6", 265 pound guy that comes out all day. We're right here. Fade route, you know. If it's a linebacker, take advantage of the athleticism, make a move, get inside, run the slant route. So there's different options that he brings to the table. I love his movement skills, and that was the thing that really stood out to me about him. So I think that Ryan O'Malley is a guy that, you know, going into the NFL, next level, I think he could also cause matchup problems. So we're starting to develop a theme here, you know, athletic quarterbacks, matchup problems. when we get to the next position, we're also going to see another theme in physicality.
I mean, you talk about his teammate, Tanner Thexton out of Penn, a guy that was a former defensive lineman. So, hey, Seattle may find him intriguing. The Seattle Seahawks love taking former defensive linemen and moving them to offensive line, but Thexton really held his own at Penn. You talked about his cut blocking ability. You talk about a guy that moves just like a tight end. He worked out at Temple's Pro Day. He also worked out at the Baltimore Regional Combine as well, ran well. And when you put on the film, you see a guy that's just a tenacious blocker.
Yeah, and I think a part of that tenacity is being able to throw and throw accurately, right? When you watch him, he doesn't miss too many of his cut blocks. And I mean, we're talking about guys flying off the edge, and he takes his drop and cuts right into him, chops him right down. I love that. You know, you want to see a guy that could be accurate with that. That's a difficult thing to do. But more importantly, he's able to get back into his drops also. He does a good job of washing the interior lineman down when he has to do that. I like him. You know, he's a guy 6'5", 330 pounds, athletic left tackle. That's what you want at that position. You know, these edge rushers, you got Von Miller coming off the edge. You have to be able to have the footwork to recover when a guy like that is coming off the edge if he uses his spin move. And there's a guy we'll talk about a little bit later that really impressed me with that. So I think that Tanner Thexton is definitely an outstanding player.
And you touched on him just now, just let me right into him, a guy that had a tremendous pro day just yesterday in Rachel Meter out of Monmouth, another big athletic offensive tackle, 6'6", 330, I believe, a guy that moves like a guard and is very good with his recovery and redirecting skills. And that's going to be that's key, because a lot of guys you see absorb and they get walked back into the offensive to the backfield into the quarterback, or some guys are able to absorb and then redirect and then move. And I think that's something that Meter does a great job at the offense tackle spot.
Yeah, you saw him do that frequently. And I think one of the other things I really like was just he's nasty. You know, he finishes his blocks. There were a few times where, you know, he drove the guy to the ground and jumped on him. And those little things, you know, that wears away at you during the game. He's a right tackle, but he's equipped to handle that speed, because it's coming off, it's both sides now.
Right.
You know, you got Von Miller on the left, you got him on the right. How do you want it? And you have to be able to handle that on both sides. So I think that's really outstanding. He breaks down very well. If you notice, when he gets to the second level, he doesn't miss the linebackers too much. A lot of times he actually violated them in times when he got to them. Yeah, so I like this guy a lot. Small school kid, so it's definitely good to see, you know, a small school guy come out and show what he could do. And as we mentioned always, it's not about where you come from. It's about what you do when you get there.
And you look at a guy that has a bright future ahead of him as well. We talked about him in the Pro Day segment. Garrett Mayweather Jr. out of Fordham. And you look at a guy that we're probably going to talk about a lot this season in the backfield, also probably later on in the spring next year with the draft or what have you. Every big run Chase Edmonds has, 9 times out of 10, came from behind following the left guard, number 76 in Mayweather.
Yeah, man, when you watch him, he's a bully of a blocker. That's the first thing I thought of when I see this guy. And just the way that every time he gets hands on a defender, they're going to the ground. And that's something, I mean, in the first 2 minutes that I watched him, I told you, I counted about 14 knockdowns. So he's not only moving guys out of the way, he's eliminating them. And I think that's a really big key. You look at his size, 6'3", 321. He moves very well. There were times where you saw him pull and get out in space, and a couple times the poor DB was sitting there and just backpedaling and didn't know what to do, and he just went to him, broke down, didn't miss him, drove him right to the ground. So I really like Garrett Mayweather as a prospect. As we mentioned earlier, he has the bloodline as you told me, you know, his father played with the Ravens. Outstanding guy, man, outstanding, and I think he is one of those guys. You look at his own scheme, or you look at a team that likes to throw a lot of screens, he's someone that fits right into that type of program.
He's a tremendous player, and a lot of these guys here at the FCS level are tremendous football players. We just ran through the offensive prospects for this year's draft class that you should definitely keep an eye on and check out. And so that's it here, man, for the first episode of the FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, Teron Davenport, and for everyone involved, the camera crew, the sound crew, everyone that has participated, the correspondents in this first episode, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.